Welcome to Ecclesia Principles, a biblical strategy for believers to engage in God's design for government with Ray Eppard.
Glad you could join us again today. This week we've been looking at what we need to do to make sure we balance self-government with centralization. Centralization is a necessity. It has a lot of benefits. It makes life better. It creates greater efficiencies. It brings costs down. It's very frequently just a better way of doing things. The only problem is power attracts money, and money attracts power. And when you have a sin nature, and this has been the undercurrent of what we've been talking about, Romans 7:23 says, "But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin which is in my members." This sin nature is in every human being. And as power grows, there's a tendency for that sin nature to want to rise up and use that power in a destructive way. Just look at history. History is full of that. And with this, we've said that the counterbalance to centralization is not bad in and of itself, but it has to be counterbalanced with self-government and the rights of the individual. It has to be counterbalanced with that. And we've been looking at a couple of the amendments to the Constitution in that regard, because the concept being that we're working off of right now is the 13 colonies, when they chose to go to war with England, then we had a Declaration of Independence. And the phrase United States really came into being at that point, these United States of America. Then you had the Articles of Confederation, which is the governmental documents that were adopted after the Revolution was won. But it wasn't effective. It increased centralization over the Declaration, but it didn't. It had a whole lot of problems. And if you read the history of that, there was just tons of problems. Then they came up with the Constitutional. And that Constitution created an even stronger centralized government. It was needed. But in that discussion, it was realized that if we're going to create a stronger centralized government, we need to make sure the strength of self-government of the individual matches it, that there is a balance. And with that, particularly led by James Madison, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution were put into place. And, the First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law. In other words, Congress, you have no jurisdiction here. You do not have the right to say in these areas. This is off limits to you. This is the rights of self-government and the individual. Now, I want to read the Fourth Amendment. I want to read that to you because, again, we're skipping the third one. But there's just certain parts that I want to bring out because in this time frame, we have to understand centralization overall is good. But as centralization increases, we have to make sure that the strength of self-government and the rights of individuals are not weakened in that process. If anything, we need to, like the Founding Fathers, we need to ensure that those rights are in place and intact and fully protected. That's the only thing that can keep centralization in check. Otherwise, it will become oppressive. But the Fourth Amendment says, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. Again, at this point, it wasn't just now freedom of conscience, freedom of speech. This is, my stuff is free. My stuff is free. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That term, pursuit of happiness, was originally in the Declaration of Independence put as the right of property. But because of the division over the subject of slavery, Jefferson changed it because they didn't want the property to be an enshrinement of slavery, and so the pursuit of happiness. Now, with this, the Fourth Amendment basically says my stuff is free, and that the government doesn't have access to it without cause, and states some of the things that has to be in the part of it. It has to be under oath. That cause has to be, well, somebody just told me. No, it has to be under oath. It has to be stating what's looking for, what would be seized, what would be taken. Those things have to be there. Not only am I free, my stuff is free. My stuff is free. And especially in our world today, this is also under attack. That in the information age, information is out there and it's everywhere. And in all reality, people are collecting information on you left and right, places that you don't even realize it. Every purchase you make, I do a lot of ordering online myself, and every purchase you make is being tracked so that they know what you like, what you're doing, what you're interested in. Matter of fact, there's a lot of times if you just watch your phone, and next thing you know, you'll see on one of the social media sites, you'll see something that you were discussing either yesterday or earlier in the day. Ads for that will start showing up. Why? Because this little phone's listening to you. You're being tracked in so many ways that you don't know it. And now I'm not I'm not in paranoia at that point. But what I'm talking about is we can't just take the approach that, well, it's just too big and there's no turning back now and there's nothing we can do. And see, a lot of centralization, that's part of the argument for it. Our world is so big. There's so much stuff. There's so many bad people. We just have to accept this if we're going to have security. And you see, one of the things that centralization will always try to sell you is that it can protect you, that it can take care of you, that you'll be all right. Just let them take care of you. We can take care of you. You will be all right. You won't have to worry. Well, the bottom line on that is, that all sounds really good, but that kind of undermines self-government. It undermines my right to make choices. And you see, some of my choices might be wrong. I've made some bad choices in life. I've made some investments. Didn't turn out too good. And at that point, centralization is like, we will make sure nothing bad happens. We will make sure nothing bad happens. Everybody's going to be okay. We just need the power to make sure everybody's going to be okay. And ultimately, we've said this before, that maturity requires responsibility. Maturity requires responsibility. And centralization tends to take the responsibility from the individual, so they are not able to develop as much of a responsibility. They're not able to function responsibly, so their self-government goes down. They do not function in their self-government adequately or appropriately. And centralization comes back and says, well, there's just more people that they just don't know what to do. We need to increase our authority to take care of these people, to make sure they're okay. No, what we need to do is, rather than giving centralization the power, we need to put those same resources into helping people become more effective in their own self-government, help them learn responsibility. And unfortunately, and this is a big thing in our culture right now, and I just pray I don't make some of you upset, but if I do, you need to understand that you being upset over this is a part of our problem right now. And that's, I have two sons, which they're both in their 20s now. But so many people today do not want their children to experience anything negative. We just need to protect our children. And I don't want them to have a bad experience. Well, the bottom line, that's part of the problem. You see, I wanted my sons to try things. I wasn't rooting for them to fail, but a part of the discovery of life is trying things. You fail at this one, you succeed at that one. Now you start knowing what abilities you have. Now you start developing a sense of what you can do and what you can't do. But the parents of today are trying to protect their kids to such a degree that they don't know disappointment. Dear God, help us. Your child should experience some disappointment in life. Mine did. I encouraged them to try things that I didn't know if they could do it or not. I mean, it wasn't anything that put them at risk of injury. But in all reality, we are growing a generation of children that have no strength of character, that they have no emotional strength, that they are weak emotionally because mama and daddy don't want them to experience anything bad. And our public policy, the centralization, government is having to compensate for all of these people that can't deal with somebody looked at them funny or somebody said something that they didn't like. No, we have to develop strong self-government. We have to develop a strong sense of responsibility. We need to develop strong people. And you do not develop strong people by avoiding difficulties, by avoiding problems, by making sure that little Johnny or little Susie doesn't get upset. I remember when both of my sons, they were on some teams, and they thought they were better than somebody else that was playing, and so did I. But that wasn't what the coach was doing. And I never went to the coach and talked to him about it. I told them, I said, you work at getting better, you do your best and make sure you're so good that they can't keep from putting you in. And at that point, it wasn't that they were the great superstar or anything like that, but it put responsibility on them to rise to the occasion. We've got to stop taking everything off of our kids if we don't want them to be oppressed. By thinking we're taking oppression off of them, we're suiting them up to be completely oppressed. Join us next week.